Welcome back to Let the Quran Speak. In the past few years, there's been much discussion in Canada about women veiling in public. And so we'll discuss that. Brother Shabir, in light of a case recently of a woman who wanted to testify with a face veil in court. And so this raised questions about whether she should be permitted to do that. And so there were court rulings on that. So I guess maybe to take a step back and ask why Muslims wear the veil, what is actually required of the veil, of those who wear the veil, and then what sort of leniency is there within Islamic law for people who believe that they should be wearing the veil.
Yeah, just to be clear, before I get to the specifics of your question, of course, Canada is a democracy,
yes.
And this question has to be studied from the point of view of a democratic system. What degrees of freedom can be allowed to the citizens in such a land. And of course, this is a matter for the political philosophers to deal with. So I'm not dealing with it from that angle, but from the religious point of view, looking at the requirements of Islam with regards to this, we can say that there has been among Muslim scholars a wide spectrum of opinion regarding the face veil. Some scholars think that it is an obligation for a woman to cover her face when she goes out in public. On the other side of the spectrum, something that is not a requirement at all. Mm-hmm. And in the middle, something that is not a requirement, but it is nevertheless a recommendation that is recommended for a woman to have this. And especially so if she's particularly attractive, which means that there is some subjective judgment here to be applied. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, those who have the view that the veil is not a requirement are quite in the majority. You will find, for example, in many parts of the world, such as in India, Pakistan, Indonesia, and elsewhere, where you have large Muslim populations.
They don't cover their faces.
It will be quite uncommon for anyone.
Of course,
to
when we
cover.
say veil, we mean covering one's face.
Covering one's
not
face. Let's say niqab, or to say face veil, because to say face veil in Arabic, that's niqab. Mm-hmm. And when we say veil, it's a little bit ambiguous. What is it?
Yes.
Because some people use the term veil to refer to the
like
head cover,
headscarf, yes.
and that's not what we mean here. So the face veil, or the niqab, is not worn in these lands. And if anyone wants to wear it nowadays, it'll be due to the influence from some other interpretations of Islam, as, for example, that might be prevalent in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, where it is very common to find women covering their faces, because some of the scholars there do insist that this is an Islamic requirement.
But it is a legitimate interpretation to say that a Muslim woman should wear the veil. The face veil.
It is a very common interpretation, and it is an interpretation that has been held by many important scholars of Islam and continues to be held by many important scholars. But in my own review of this matter, I don't find the case for declaring this compulsory to be very strong. In fact, I find it to be very weak. Mm-hmm. And I find that wearing the face veil has more to do with the cultural situations that prevailed in many lands where Muslims came to find themselves, much more so than to the requirements of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So can you explain this a bit further?
Well, those who want to say that the veil should be worn would link that requirement to Surah 33, verse number 59. Now, the verse on the surface says nothing about covering faces. In fact, one might even wonder if it doesn't mean reveal the faces, because it says لَتَعَارَفُوا, that they should be known. How do you know them unless the faces are open so you can recognize them? But the commentators, to make this mean that a woman should cover her face, say that the slave women at the time did not cover their faces, but the free women were expected to cover their faces. And when the believing women went out with their faces uncovered, they became objects for molestation by the hypocrites at the time. And they were directed in this verse to govern themselves in such a way that they will be recognized as free women. Mm-hmm. So how would they be recognized as free women? By, the commentators say, by covering their faces.
And in this way they wouldn't be
molested.
Yes.
So even if one said that this is the true historical circumstance, then one sees that there is a rationale which is given here by the commentators, that they should be recognized as free women. But if the point is to be recognized as free women, well, nowadays women are recognized to be free not by wearing a veil, but by living in free countries where people are free and where there are no slaves. So if the Quran was saying, govern yourself as a free woman, well then that's how women are without the face veil. But that is if that interpretation is correct. So in no way then can we argue that the face veil would be a requirement.
So setting aside that your interpretation then, what about those who actually believe that the face veil is required? What would be the requirements for their wearing the face veil? What are the sorts of things that they would be doing? Would they be wearing it everywhere? Would they be wearing it in their home?
Yeah, normally if one considers it to be a requirement, one would wear it in all public areas where one can be seen by a non-related male person. And that would be for everywhere, whether one is in court or anywhere else. But generally in Islamic law there is a certain degree of flexibility, which the average Muslim may not be aware of, but the scholars are quite aware of this, because the scholars prescribe the rules, and or at least they try to explain what the rules are, but sometimes they give it in a brief manner. And the average person thinks that this is an unchangeable rule for all times, for all circumstances, regardless of what is happening. Even if the world is falling, or the sky is falling down around you, you still continue the same thing. But there are always exceptions and adjustments for circumstances. So even if one considers the wearing of the face cover to be mandatory, there can be some situations where one might be willing to let go of it.
Is any of that laid out by scholars?
Generally, I'm not aware that anyone has given a ruling specifically with this in mind, but the scholars who generally insist that the woman must cover her face are generally not here to see the situation that one is in, and ruling from a distance sometimes can result in a rule that is not quite so suitable to the time and place and the circumstance in which we live. But if those scholars, the same scholars, were here to see the same circumstance, they would say, okay, in this circumstance it looks like because of the difficulties that will entail, because of the unnecessary discussions that will follow from this, the purpose of the veil, obviously, from their point of view, was to not let the woman be a source of unnecessary distraction and become as they would say, the tool of the devil, inciting all of the men and so on. They might say that in a court setting where there's a solemn occasion here, there's the real task at hand of determining innocence or guilt. It's not a matter of looking at a woman's beauty. In this case, removing the face veil is not going to be a major problem, and there can be some adjustment made in this situation.
All right, we'll leave it at that. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will answer questions we've received from you, our viewers.